Cristiano Ronaldo strolled through the vibrant streets of Lisbon, blending into the bustling crowd with a casual hoodie and cap. The city was alive with chatter and the aroma of street food, but his mind wandered. He had just left a charity event where he'd given a heartfelt speech about helping those in need. Though the applause still echoed in his ears, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more he could do, something beyond speeches and donations. As he rounded a corner near the city hospital, a sight made him pause. An elderly man sat hunched on the pavement, his shoulders slumped under the weight of what seemed like the world's troubles. The man's face was gaunt, his clothes worn and frayed. Beside him was a piece of cardboard with shaky handwriting that read, "I need help. My wife is in the hospital, and I can't afford the bills." Cristiano hesitated, his heart tugged by the scene. He was no stranger to hardship. Memories of his own humble beginnings in Madeira flashed through his mind, days when his family struggled to make ends meet. With a quiet nod to his bodyguard to stay back, Cristiano approached the man. "Hello, sir," he said gently. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, startled. His eyes were filled with exhaustion and a flicker of embarrassment. "I'm fine," he mumbled, though his appearance said otherwise. Cristiano crouched down to meet him at eye level. "What's your name?" "Fernando," the man replied after a pause, his voice barely above a whisper. Cristiano noticed a tremble in his hands as he clutched a small cup with a few coins. "Fernando, can you tell me what's going on?" The man sighed deeply, his shoulders sagging even further. "My wife, Clara, is in the hospital. She's been there for a week. They say she needs surgery, but I've sold everything I had, our furniture, even my tools, and it's still not enough. I don't know what else to do." Cristiano's chest tightened. He could see the desperation in Fernando's eyes, but also a quiet dignity. This wasn't just a man asking for money. This was someone trying to save the person he loved most in the world. Without hesitation, Cristiano reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of bills, holding them out to Fernando. But Fernando shook his head. "I can't take your money," he said, his voice firm despite its tremor. "I'm not looking for charity. I just need work or a miracle." Cristiano smiled softly. Sometimes, miracles come in unexpected ways. He stood up and extended his hand to Fernando. "Let's go to the hospital together. I want to meet Clara." Fernando hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. But something in Cristiano's tone, calm, genuine, and reassuring, convinced him to accept. As they walked toward the hospital, Fernando shared pieces of his story. He had been a carpenter for most of his life, crafting furniture and repairing homes. But the economic downturn had hit him hard, and work became scarce. When Clara fell ill, their savings vanished in the blink of an eye. At the hospital, the sterile smell of disinfectant greeted them. Nurses bustled about, tending to patients and checking monitors. Fernando led Cristiano to a small room where Clara lay on a narrow bed, her face pale and thin. Machines beeped softly around her, and an oxygen mask covered her mouth. Cristiano felt a lump rise in his throat. Clara looked fragile, but there was a quiet strength in the way she gripped Fernando's hand when he approached her bedside. "This is the man I told you about," Fernando said, his voice breaking slightly. He wants help." Clara's eyes fluttered open, and she gave Cristiano a weak but warm smile. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "But we don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Cristiano replied firmly. "Let's talk to the doctors and see what can be done." The doctors explained that Clara needed a surgery to remove a blockage in her lungs. It wasn't an extremely rare procedure, but it required precision and expertise. The cost, however, was far beyond what Fernando could ever hope to afford. Cristiano listened carefully, nodding as he absorbed the details. When the doctor finished, he excused himself and stepped outside to make a call. His fingers flew across his phone as he dialed Jorge Mendez, his longtime manager and trusted confidant. "Jorge," Cristiano began, his voice steady but urgent. I need you to arrange payment for a surgery at Lisbon General Hospital. Yes, I'll cover everything. Just make it happen quickly. By the time Cristiano returned to the room, a nurse was speaking with Fernando. She looked confused but slightly amused. Sir, someone has already paid for the surgery and all related expenses, she said. You don't owe a single euro. Fernando's mouth fell open, and he turned to Cristiano, his eyes wide. Did you? Cristiano shrugged lightly, his smile humble. Let's just say I believe in miracles. Fernando stood frozen for a moment, then suddenly grabbed Cristiano's hands. Tears streamed down his weathered face as he tried to form words. Thank you, he finally choked out. I don't know how to repay you. Cristiano gripped his hands firmly. You don't have to repay me. Just focus on getting Clara better. The surgery was scheduled for the next day. As the hours passed, Fernando stayed by Clara's side, holding her hand and whispering words of love and encouragement. Cristiano stayed in the background, quietly checking in with the doctors and ensuring everything was in place. The next morning, Clara was wheeled into the operating room. Fernando paced the waiting area, his anxiety palpable. Cristiano stayed with him, offering quiet reassurance. Hours later, the surgeon emerged, his expression calm and composed. The surgery was successful, he announced. Clara is stable and recovering. Fernando collapsed into a chair, his hands covering his face as relief washed over him. Cristiano patted his shoulder. She's going to be okay, he said softly. When Clara woke up, she was groggy but alert. Fernando sat beside her, his eyes red from crying but filled with joy. Cristiano entered the room with a bouquet of fresh flowers, his presence as unassuming as ever. Clara smiled weakly. You've done so much for us. Why would you help strangers like this? Cristiano pulled up a chair and sat beside her. Because I've been in your shoes before, he said simply. I know what it's like to struggle, to feel like the odds are stacked against you. I've been blessed, and it's only right to use those blessings to help others. Before leaving, Cristiano handed Fernando a small envelope. This isn't just about today, he said. Inside, you'll find something to help you get back on your feet. After Cristiano left, Fernando opened the envelope. Inside were papers offering him a position as the manager of a community woodworking workshop, a project Cristiano had been funding quietly. The job came with a steady salary, housing assistance, and access to tools. Fernando's hands shook as he showed the papers to Clara. He didn't just save you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He's given us a future. That night, as Fernando sat by Clara's bedside, he reflected on how one act of kindness had transformed their lives. Cristiano, meanwhile, returned to his hotel with a quiet sense of fulfillment. He didn't need the world to know what he had done. The smiles on Fernando and Clara's faces were reward enough. The days following Clara's successful surgery were a whirlwind of change for Fernando and his wife. Clara's health improved steadily, and soon she was able to sit up and engage in cheerful conversations with the nurses and doctors who had grown fond of her gentle demeanor. Fernando, who had spent weeks in despair, now moved with a spring in his step, filled with hope for the future. Meanwhile, Cristiano Ronaldo kept tabs on their progress discreetly. Though he had stepped back from the hospital after ensuring everything was in place, he couldn't help but feel a connection to the couple. Their story reminded him of his own family's struggles, and he wanted to see them truly thrive. One sunny afternoon, as Fernando was finalizing Clara's discharge paperwork, a nurse handed him a small envelope. "This just arrived for you," she said with a smile. Curious, Fernando opened the envelope and found an invitation. It was addressed to both him and Clara, inviting them to a private charity gala hosted by none other than Cristiano Ronaldo. The event was to be held at a luxurious venue in Lisbon, and the invitation included a handwritten note. "Fernando and Clara, your resilience and love for one another are truly inspiring. I'd be honored if you could join me at this event. I have one more surprise for you. Warm regards, Cristiano." Fernando read the note aloud to Clara, who beamed with excitement. "We must go," she said. "Not to thank him again, though we will, but because I want to see the man who gave us our lives back." A week later, dressed in modest but elegant attire provided by one of Cristiano's assistants, Fernando and Clara arrived at the gala. The venue was breathtaking, with crystal chandeliers, soft music, and an atmosphere of hope and generosity. The room was filled with people from all walks of life, from fellow benefactors to those who had received help like Fernando and Clara. When Cristiano spotted them from across the room, his face lit up with a warm smile. He excused himself from a conversation and walked over, greeting them with genuine joy. "You both look wonderful," he said, shaking Fernando's hand and giving Clara a gentle hug. "We can't thank you enough," Clara began, but Cristiano held up his hand, stopping her. "You've already thanked me plenty. Tonight is about celebrating the future." The evening unfolded beautifully. Cristiano spoke to the audience about the importance of giving back, sharing stories of the people he had met and the lives he hoped to change. Fernando and Clara listened intently, their admiration for him growing with each word. As the gala neared its conclusion, Cristiano took the stage once more. "Before we end tonight," he announced, "there's one more thing I'd like to share. Sometimes, helping others isn't just about money. It's about creating opportunities." He gestured toward Fernando and Clara, who looked at each other in confusion as the spotlight shifted to them. "This couple has shown incredible strength in the face of adversity," Cristiano continued, "and I want to ensure they have the tools to build a brighter future." A large screen lit up behind him, displaying the name of a new workshop, Fernando's Woodcrafts. It was a fully equipped woodworking facility, funded and built under Cristiano's initiative. Fernando would not only manage it, but also have the chance to teach his craft to others and sell his creations through partnerships Cristiano had arranged. Fernando's mouth fell open and Clara covered her face, overwhelmed with emotion. The audience erupted into applause, and Cristiano stepped off the stage to guide them up. "This is your moment," he said quietly to Fernando. Fernando stood at the microphone, his voice trembling as he addressed the crowd. "I never imagined that someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, a man with everything, would take the time to care about someone like me. He didn't just help us. He believed in us. And for that, I'll be forever grateful." The crowd cheered, and tears flowed freely. Cristiano embraced both Fernando and Clara, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about doing the right thing. In the months that followed, Fernando's workshop became a beacon of hope in Lisbon. He employed people from the community who had also fallen on hard times, teaching them the art of woodworking and helping them earn a living. Clara, fully recovered, often visited the workshop to lend a hand, her laughter filling the space as she encouraged Fernando and his team. As for Cristiano, he continued his career on the pitch, but stories of his quiet acts of kindness began to spread. Though he never sought the spotlight for his philanthropy, his actions inspired countless others to give back in their own ways. One evening, Fernando and Clara sat together outside their modest yet comfortable home, watching the sunset. The workshop sign glowed softly in the distance, a reminder of how far they had come. "Do you think we'll ever see Cristiano again?" Clara asked, her head resting on Fernando's shoulder. Fernando smiled. "Maybe not in person, but we see him every day in what he's done for us, and for so many others." And with that, they sat in peaceful silence, their hearts full of gratitude for the man who had turned their darkest days into a story of hope and renewal.